that would be redundant. I'm about to introduce you in a minute anyway. So, without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to Amy and Kevin from STEM the Musical.
All right.
Hi, so yes, we are Amy Pruitt and Kevin Badanis, the co-creators of STEM the Musical, a multifaceted edutainment brand. We'll get into more about what that means. The first phase of our business is creating STEM the Musical Explains the Universe, a 50-minute educational show that shows kids that all of their dreams matter, and regardless of their background, STEM is for them. Anybody can do this. To give you just a taste of the inspirational nature of our show, we have Tyra Scott singing I Climb.
I'm gonna soar, you're gonna watch me go further and faster. The galaxy's call. Why would you wish upon one little star when you can have them all? I want them all. I climb, I reach, and I'll fly through the blue to the lights on the other side. I climb, I reach, I run, I rise.
We strongly feel that every student in every classroom should hear these inspirational words and this inspirational message.
So, what is STEM the Musical? You just saw a little bit of a snippet of this, what we call the Scholastic Edition. STEM the Musical Explains the Universe. And this is the very first of our many productions that we are creating as part of this project, as part of this initiative. STEM the Musical in total is a collection of educational assemblies that we present to elementary and middle school audiences, augmented with a full super performing arts center style family production that is currently in pre-production with a debut in 2020 at the Duke Energy Center in Raleigh. And that is what is called STEM the Musical, just headline, STEM the Musical by itself. When you factor in merchandise, when you factor in licensing, when you factor in animations and spin-offs and music and cast albums and CDs, you create our company, STEM the Musical. So Amy's going to take you through our phases of development, the first phase of which is completed, and as we move into the future.
So phase one is STEM the Musical Explains the Universe by itself, 50-minute lightweight show, built for traveling, built for the school day. We go into K through 8 classrooms, perform assemblies. We've done in our first 2 seasons, which we're at the tail end of our second season right now, 90 plus performances in 6 states. This was our kind of development / proof of concept phase. And just briefly to get this out of the way, I used the word edutainment a moment ago, just in case anybody's unfamiliar. That's the intersection of education and entertainment. So we come from a similar place as Schoolhouse Rock or Sesame Street, pairing the arts with education to really have staying power. Phase 2, which is the one that's in development right now, STEM the Musical Theatrical Edition, a full 90-minute show with all of the attendant bells and whistles. We are in partnership with Theatre Raleigh. Decorated Broadway actress Lauren Kennedy is going to be producing and directing the debut, scheduled for next fall. This is going to be, in addition, so in terms of the business model and the growth of the business, this is going to work in symbiosis with STEM the Musical Scholastic Edition. It's going to continue to tour. It's going to continue to be performed. We are adding this piece to it next.
In phase 3, we have an opportunity to sort of put it all together. That theatrical edition will go on the road as immediately after the conclusion of the debut in late 2020, and it'll move into a number of large cities with large performing arts centers. And it is our hope that we're able to bring the school show in during the week, and then on the weekend bring in the theatrical edition. And it's a wonderful opportunity and a very unique opportunity in theater and as a business model to have the massive engine of tens of thousands of students who have already seen the Scholastic edition in a large city bugging their parents about going to see the theatrical version that weekend. And when you add in, also in phase 3, a lot of merchandising around the show, characters, branding, and licensing, we're poised to really make some significant moves.
All right, so it was very difficult to make a bar graph that all fit on one page with our projected numbers here, but I'll just take you briefly through this. So in 2018, we, with just the school show, we had $35,000 in revenue that was in a single county in North Carolina. This present school year that's ending right now, we had to prove that not only was the show viable, not only was the show going to do what we had intended, inspire audiences, have teachers and administrators bring us in and pay us, but also could we take the show on the road? Could we build a viable touring model? And that's what we've proven this year. We've done all but maybe 3 or 4 shows out of state on the road this year. So we definitely have that under our belts now. Projecting into next year, we anticipate doubling once again our numbers, and this is just with the single school show. We anticipate combining local and tours next year to create about $125,000 in revenue. 2020 and 2021 is where it really gets fun. That's where we get to add in the revenue, the projected revenue from the theatrical edition, and then that's the first year also that merchandise will really become its own category. This looks like a really large number, this $3 million. Kevin's going to explain and kind of get into the nitty-gritty and the numbers in a little bit about why we think that's a really reasonable estimate of where the touring production could go in its just first couple of seasons.
So levels of involvement is also what I understand this body refers to as the question, the problem, the thing to answer. We're looking to find partners for a number of different aspects of this. There are corporate partners out there who would be interested in bringing STEM the Musical to as many students as possible. Our goal is to reach 1 million marginalized and disconnected students in the next 5 years directly in their school. In order to do that, we need to find partners who want to see their local communities or even their regional areas get to hear that message in front of as many small children as possible that STEM is for them.
I just want to cut in real quickly right here. We discovered early on in this process, Wake County, North Carolina is a fairly affluent county, that we could do this show in the suburbs ad nauseum and that would be just fine. But the mission of the show, and the show is constructed around getting this information, getting this message of encouragement in front of the kids who need to hear it most. And those are the schools and the kids that are least likely to be able to afford us. So we really need to find a way to be able to bring our message home.
Our sort of other big question, and I cannot wait to hear feedback on this particular one, is how to generate the same kinds of returns and profit in a road model as in a local model. You know, people that have contacts with rental car companies, hotel companies, restaurant groups. Obviously, you know, when you're not paying out a lot of different expenses to go on the road, your money goes further when it comes to show revenue. And trying to bring all that down to the local level is really going to help us take off and fly. And the third thing is we're looking for simply a national partner. It's expensive to create a theatrical show. While the actual show itself is incredibly easy and inexpensive to produce once it's in place, we're talking 4K digital mapping projection technology to create fantastic worlds of science and math in even a high school auditorium. In order to do that, we need the projectors and we need the talent. And after at that point, the cast is only 4 cast members and a couple of engineers and a stage manager, so it's a very inexpensive show to produce on an ongoing basis. Most of those costs are front-loaded. And so ultimately, we're also looking for partners in that way.
And with that, we just want to go ahead and thank you, first of all, for having us. We're really happy to be here. We'd love to open up for conversation, questions, and discussion. And I want every one of your business cards before we leave.
Okay. I'm Russ. I'm going to be the moderator and help field in questions for you guys. So do we have questions for STEM the Musical? All right.
First of all, outstanding concept. You, I think, are on the brink of something pretty, really big. So congratulations. And are you based in Raleigh?
We are.
Okay. So before you leave town, I recommend highly that you contact, even though I'm not really a big fan of, sending people to the government, but there is one entity called the National Science Foundation, who their sole job is to give out grants and contacts. I recommend highly that you reach out to the National Science Foundation.
I have a contact there.
You do.
Thank you.
Amazing.
There we go.
Don't worry, we're going to be giving you cards.
Okay.
And it's all being videotaped, so you're going to
There we go. No.
My recommendation, National Science
Okay.
Foundation. They will be thrilled to hear about this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
John, yeah?
So before we go to the next person, make sure that you have your cards. Please put your name and your email address at the top of the page. And if you have an idea and we may not get to you, make sure that you write that information down for us, please.
Is she gonna sing again?
We were told last time, no more pitching, just 8 minutes of Tyra.
Because I was jotting something down, I thought that you were playing something like on a pre-recorded. I didn't realize
Oh,
it was
no.
live.
Yeah.
I looked up and she was singing.
What you hear is exactly how the show is performed. We use these backing tracks, with all of our gear in a school, and then we have the actors that sing to those tracks.
So help me understand. I know it's all such a generic question, but in terms of what the, I guess your end goal, your goals here, is it to be like a school of rock, a brick and mortar business entity where you're trained developing these productions? Is it something along those lines, analogous to that?
I think so.
Yeah.
If you think about what are the global brands of our lifetime, we do this conjunction junction. Why do you know that?
Right.
Think about why you know that.
Some
What
of
we
you
want to
haven't
do
thought
is
about that in 30 years.
exactly.
Yeah.
Space repetition.
That's
The
right.
other, just if I, so have you looked at, one of the things could be a launching point for you, we talk to this, where like fairs, festivals and things of that nature. I live in the town of Vienna, I don't know if Viva Vienna is a big thing.
Yeah.
And School of Rock they started this years ago where they were production.
productions, yeah.
And it's been very successful. And they got to play like 80s music. I remember the first time I ever heard them, they sang Oceans by Led Zeppelin, which is a difficult song, and they performed it beautifully. I'm sure they had more enrollment in that school right after that thing, so that might be an opportunity, something you want to consider.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Aisha?
So I'm a school, and I think we should set up a one-to-one because I work with a lot of public schools in the area.
That'd be great.
So, and I also work with Back to Rock, so partner with them here.
Yeah.
Work together, so
Yeah.
we'll set up something afterwards.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Jen?
Two questions. One is, are you trying to build an approach similar to Hamilton in New York City where you develop curriculum that goes with it, or do you just work with teachers to say, when's a good time to tie into curriculum? So that's one question.
Yeah.
My second question is, are you also looking at creating virtual reality concerts that can be delivered that way?
Great question. So we didn't really touch on this, but when we were writing the script and when we were writing the lyrics to the show, I had in one window my script open and in the other window Common Core curriculum. So we actually specifically wrote to the grade levels that we are intending to be in front of. And since you obviously can't deliver math concepts to a kindergartner the same way you can to an 8th grader, our lyrics actually adjust to meet the level of the audience we're in front of on any particular performance. So we like to keep our audience size around 300-400 kids, and in an average elementary school, that's 2 shows. So we'll do a performance for K through 2, then we'll do one for 3 through 5. And for instance, in the song Math is Everywhere, we will give examples such as, you use math and sports to keep track of who won the soccer game and how you calculate your batting average. And then we're in front of, the middle school kids, we're talking about the golden ratio in nature and how everything is, so we literally changed the show performance by performance to be in line with Common Core and state educational standards. We haven't yet tapped into the idea of doing like a virtual or a live camp. At this stage, we don't want to dilute the profit model. but that's definitely something we want to consider and think about down the road.
We had hoped that this would lend itself to like a PBS series,
Yeah.
Nickelodeon, you know, cartoons of these
Special.
branded characters. Because in all of the STEM the Musical iterations, whether it be the school show or the main stage show, it is still just the 4 characters with those personalities that continue to evolve, and but they are the same characters each time.
Tony?
Okay. I've seen on your website you have some great videos up there with some examples of the show. Love it. That's part of what inspired me to, you know, say yes right away when you applied. Quick question for you is this: do you have a professionally produced video that shows you, the team, and the actual performance together that can be sent to school boards? Because here is where your foot is. The school boards ultimately decide what the extracurricular and activities are. They then produce the list and send those lists to the principals and say, you can choose these. These are the approved presenters and extracurricular activities and stuff like that that we're allowing and permitting. So if you have that and can send that out into with a packet, mail it to them, the school boards will get that. This is something that is a no-brainer, all right? Because I can tell you right now, having two family members, my daughter and my wife, teaching in Fairfax County Public Schools at different places, they're desperate for stuff that's popular with the kids. And right now I can tell you the hottest person right now is the snake guy. Okay, that in Fairfax County, that's the popular guy. Every school books him solid because the kids love that. But this is something that is so huge that will get all the teachers and the principals involved. The trick is they don't know about it. How do I know that? Because I asked the principal at my wife's school about you, and she was completely clueless.
Really?
We have to thank you for that in terms of Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia has been a bit of a puzzle for us. Because while
It's a puzzle for us.
it speaks to the different ways that school shows get booked on literally a county by county basis throughout the entire United States. On places like Long Island and even Wake County, there's a central arts agency that collects all of these school show performers into one place, all the PTA liaisons and school personnel who are the decision makers in one place. They have a big festival, they have a big showcase, and in the case of what you saw in our first season, Little Wake County produced 35 shows.
86 schools total.
86 schools saw us, 35 shows booked us. So we know that if we can get in front of them, we're not going to have any problem getting them and getting lots of them. There is no such entity in the state of Virginia, and we've looked, that has this level of detail in terms of this kind of connection and liaisoning. And so you just described a process in terms of school boards making these decisions that is not a process that we personally have had any intersection with or way to enter. And boy, would we be delighted to be able to learn how to do it here.
We will talk at the end.
Yeah.
John, then Jen.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand your model a little bit. Are you trying to, as you grow, are you trying to maintain everything under one umbrella? Are you looking to license? And the preface, or the reason I'm asking, is that if you go like to any community, there's already an existing small theater community. We have, like over in Herndon, we've got Next Stop Theater, which is a great little theater troupe. There's half a dozen others that I'm not thinking about, all within a 20 to 40 minute drive of here. Unless it's rush hour, then it's 3 days. But joking aside, though they are looking for ways to expand their business. And if there's some sort of licensing model that you considered with them, it's they already have the talent and they're looking for ways to monetize it. So that could be a good partnering relationship.
We're definitely looking to license as part of the 4th and 5th year, and it allows theater companies to, as they would obtain the rights to any musical that they would want to perform, they will be able to obtain the rights to ours. You generally let it cycle for a couple of years so that we're the sole owners of it, and then that's an enormous revenue stream down the road.
Gotcha.
Jen, then.
Two quick thoughts. The Community Foundation, at least up here in Northern Virginia, the Business Women's Community Foundation, and the actual Northern Virginia Community Foundation is specifically focused on STEM, and they give grants towards that, and they work with all Title I schools here. So community foundations nationally, there's also, I think, 1,100 women's giving circles.
Wow.
Those could be programs that you could apply to. My only other thought would be, Try to get into the schools that Ellen DeGeneres sponsors and has funded. They're definitely Title I. and you
It's
can
so
do
funny.
performances there.
We've
That
thought
would be
about
fun.
reaching out to Ellen before. That would be a great.
That's
we
wonderful.
would love that.
So then reach out.
We would love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
It'd be wonderful.
Tony?
Okay, so now I'm gonna throw out what's basically a bad word in this organization. Have you thought about franchising? Okay, because here's the trick. Right now, you're one group.
Right.
Okay? Well, the school year is a finite period of time.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of very talented people out there.
Yeah.
Can you franchise this model so that you have others in other districts, other states, on the West Coast, East Coast, and
This
so
is
on?
something we definitely desire to do. Right now, we are double cast. So for all 4 actors and our 1 engineer, 2 people can do each role, which allows us to be more flexible with scheduling, in terms of tours and that sort of thing. We want to do that. We want to have a Chicago cast and an LA cast and a Houston cast. Like, that's absolutely what we want to do. Was it Up With People? And in the 80s, 90s?
Yeah.
Had like
Actually, 70s.
70s,
70s, 80s,
yeah.
right. Had like 5 or 6
They had
casts.
6 casts in different parts of the country that were constantly full-time in vans so they might be performing in 6 different places in the same
Right.
day, and you are absolutely
That's
right.
exactly what we
That's
wanna
the
do.
gold standard.
Yeah.
And I apologize for adding on one last question, but what is the per show cost? Staff, travel, what's the average cost per show that would work out?
So if you're talking about, for instance, a local model, and the per show cost depends on what the hotel was like that night.
Mm-hmm.
What was the rental car like that week? But on average, it costs us, and when we say per show, we are almost always in a situation, I would say 98% of the time, we do 2 shows at a school because they can't fit all their kids into one. So the 2-show model essentially is the cost to produce 2 shows is $660. And
With no other travel or
if there's no
lodging.
travel involved. So we are able to do those shows back to back, let's say in the morning, and the price to the school is somewhere between $1,700 and $2,200 in a local model. When we're on the road and we have to combine all of that together, that profit model where we're clearing about 65% drops to between 35 and 40% because of the difficulties that we have, and right now the fact that we're not connected with any corporate sponsors whatsoever. So if we're somehow able to unlock that and solve that problem and turn the model of the touring show into the model of the local show, we're going to. And the other thing too is we've said no to a lot of work.
Right.
We've had to, because if somebody in some random city wants us on one day and we can't pair it with something else to make the numbers work, we've just had to say, yeah, we're looking to put you together in a tour in the Midwest with some other folks. And I would say that for every show that we've done, there's a show out there we could have done had we been able to solve some of these problems.
Yep.
So I'm very enamored of that performance that young lady did this morning with the caliber of the show. I go and my kids are grown, so I would go see that. When you mentioned you were hoping to get picked up by Nickelodeon or PBS, it reminded me of Seth Godin, who's a marketing guru. And in this society, a lot of people are waiting to get picked when we all have microphones and cameras and the ability, we were just talking about video, the ability to make our own way. And what I know is every kid is glued to YouTube, watching videos of other people playing video games.
That's right.
Right? So the pull
Yeah.
through, like you want to go through the school boards and get parents interested in this. What I would say is we want the pull through the kids to want you at their school and to be talking about you. And with that kind of talent, I don't see why you wouldn't get so much traction on social media and YouTube.
We have a YouTube channel
That's wonderful.
that we haven't done much with, but I think that that's a
I think
terrific idea.
That's a
mistake.
great
I think
idea,
it's a
man.
solid goal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reggie?
Yes, so that kind of speaks to my question. What ways do students have to engage with the organization after the show? Because if they love it and they talk to their parents about it, the parents are, the ones who can get you further to where you want to go. So that would be my question. And along those lines, do you have an app or something that, the kids can take that show experience and still engage with you, afterward. And along those lines, last thing, maybe down the road, create some type of summer camp. So whatever they experience during that 50 or 90 minutes, make that a week-long experience that, again, if the students love it and their parents are on board, they'll send their kids to this STEM camp,
Yeah.
and they get arts, they get science, and people are already sending their kids to STEM camps. But I think if they've connected with your show and love it, that's another opportunity.
That's like a down the road dream of ours. We would love to do something like that, and whether it's something that we develop completely in-house or whether we partner with an existing, science and arts program, that is absolutely something we want to do. To answer your first question, we kicked around the idea of an app, then we found out they cost six figures, and then we were like, maybe later. But we are at STEM the Musical on all social media platforms. I'd say we're probably the most active on Instagram. So in terms of engaging with our audience outside of the performance, right now mostly all we do is we post videos of the cast behind the scenes and photos and that kind of thing. We also have a program that we do in the schools that we send to the teachers ahead of time before we go into the classroom. It's called I Am the Next, or #IamTheNext. So one of the things we do from the stage is we encourage kids to articulate their dreams. What are you going to be? What's your next? What are you going to be great at? Whether or not it relates to STEM, it doesn't matter. Kevin, coming from the education, professor background, he's told me that when you ask a kid what do you want to be and they say I don't know, it's not because they don't know, it's because they don't want to be wrong, or they're afraid to answer. So what we do is we send ahead of the show I Am the Next. It's a PDF that the teachers can print out for their students. They engage them in a conversation about what are you going to be great at, what are you interested in, and then we encourage the students to either write out or draw themselves in their careers, and then the teachers can take photos of the students holding the artwork or just the artwork itself, and we will post it on our social media pages. So right now that's what we've got. We definitely want to expand it.
So you're based out of Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
Have you talked to the folks at NC State? Two reasons. One, they have obviously they have a huge interest because they need students.
Mm-hmm.
So you can help them cultivate students as we go forward. But also too is that they have an education school, and they can, one, help you with guidance. Maybe they can, and they also have, in many cases, a performance school.
Yeah.
And which means there's a source of actors.
Right?
Yes, North Carolina State University, right? So that's the one nearest to you, but here in Virginia, it's Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so,
George Mason.
there we go. And George Mason, my wife sits on the board of the education school, so we'll make sure you get good contacts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the idea is that if you get in touch with these major universities,
Yeah.
they can spread their tentacles out and help you in multiple ways.
Briefly, because we want to hear more from you than we want to talk, but we are working actually with NCCU, which is in Durham. We are working right now, we're waiting for approval from their IRB to actually do a small pilot study to test the rigors of the show in terms of measuring impact of watching the show on student interest in STEM fields, and also to see if it piques their interest in, if it changes the answer to the question of what you want to be when you grow up. So we're actually working on giving our claims about the show some real academic teeth.
Okay.
So I was a video producer with Fairfax Network for about 15 years, and Fairfax Network is it's a channel, for lack of a better term, of enrichment programming. One of the main things that they do is called electronic field trips, where it's completely grant funded. We've partnered with the Smithsonian, NASA, big places, and basically they underwrite the production of curriculum in a video format. Now, the power of the electronic field trips from where they stand is I don't know how they're doing it now, because I haven't been there in about 6 years, but at the time we were sending everything out via satellite, which meant that we had viewers in school systems across the country, but even other parts of the world. So basically you work with the video production team there, and they can incorporate a whole script.
That's really great.
And so, like, it would just, if you've already got video of what you're doing, you
We have
could
a
definitely
idea.
you could just put that into it, but you could also talk about STEM topics and all of that. So
That's really cool.
I definitely still have contacts. I didn't burn any bridges, so I'm happy to put
Yeah.
you in touch.
I'd love to hear about that.
I would too,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay.
Jen?
I'm guessing it's also a challenge to come up with new content. So just one thought would be if you considered a competition for students to submit new song ideas and have awards go back to the student but also the school.
We did, yeah. We actually have like another show and a half's worth of songs that didn't make it into this production. So I think we're good for at least one more school show. But we did kick around the idea of students submitting us song ideas and choosing one and actually putting it in the next show.
That could be a huge
I
viral.
love that idea. Yeah.
Question?
Yes, I was. I wrote down kind of on the same lines. I wrote down mommy bloggers because I think too, if you tap into that market, you're going to get a great groundswell of people that want to have it in their school. So even if you mention at the end that, hey, you know, if this isn't in your school, please contact us and we can reach out to it. That's a good end. So you can kind of build upon that social media.
How would you do that?
I would basically tell your story because you can basically tap into PR and local PR, especially if you have certain areas. Find local bloggers, local podcasts, stuff like that. Get them to get on their get on their shows and their networks, and then you start to share that within Facebook groups and things like that. The next thing you know, it starts to build that momentum. But make sure to mention that if we're not in your school, let your PTA know, let whoever know, and then it creates that groundswell, and you don't have to do all the sales necessarily.
That's a good idea.
The other thing was along the lines of the app. I put down Alexa's skill. That might be down the line, but something like that might be good too.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, it was interesting because George and I were actually having a conversation before the meeting today when we were just talking, and there are numerous corporations that are just crying for people that are coming from the STEM community. It's why there's such a big push in it in education right now. I think, you know, you said you were looking for corporate sponsors. I think, again, whether it's an email or a video or if you can put together some sort of message, and there are literally too many corporations for me to start to name. But if you send it to their PR people, they're looking at ways and places that they can put money to get more people involved in STEM. And I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a broad paint. But,
No,
my thought.
we've sort of known this. It's just how to focusing it has been our challenge.
Yeah.
Focusing exactly what you're saying in exactly the right way.
Yeah.
With the right help. Yep.
Okay, allow me to focus this down, okay? And people in the room will not be surprised by this. How far away are you from Burlington, North Carolina?
Not far.
Okay.
An hour.
Yeah.
Okay, you know the largest corporate headquarters is in Burlington, North Carolina?
No.
LabCorp. Have you ever talked to LabCorp?
No.
Okay, LabCorp is one of the largest national sponsors of STEM programs. They also are a massive sponsor of the arts, okay? And they are in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is contact their community outreach office and let them know that this is happening. Have you done that yet?
Nope.
No, we
Okay.
know LabCorp, but like my day job when I'm not doing this, I do clinical research, so I'm definitely familiar
LabCorp
with
is one of the largest corporate sponsors of STEM programs in the country. And they also do have a massive funding for the arts.
Okay.
Mesh those together.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I happen to know someone who knows their head of corporate outreach. Okay? And people in the room know I connect dots.
Yeah.
Those are dots. Okay?
Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
John, you have
Yes, sir. First, thank you. This is wonderful, amazing what you're doing. So I want to try to tie together three things you talked about in your challenge. One is some kind of sponsorship, which a lot of people have addressed. Your turn downs because it's not economic to go for a onesie in Whereversville, and 65 versus 40%. Okay. So a couple of things. I think that you should probably for sponsorship and for presenting your programs, narrow your targets. And perhaps your criteria should be accessibility and size of community as the two parameters, because if Long Island is easy, that's big. And if you can reach that, that's a regional target where you could set up operations, limit your logistics, because it's the logistics that makes 65-40. By the way, 40 is terrific on the road. I have no idea of benchmarks in your industry, but there's nothing wrong with 40% if you're doing it 100 times, baby. You're rolling. Sponsorship, perhaps the hospitality industry is a channel to consider. The car leasing and major hotel chains. And then last, Cornell University and a couple of other places have hospitality colleges. And getting in with them, the School of Hotel Administration in Cornell, for example, getting in, and for all I know, Virginia Tech has one, it doesn't matter. Figure out, by being narrow, of who could be partners.
Thank you.
Great what you do.
Thank you.
You had a question?
Yeah, or just a thought, and you're probably doing this already, but as you're reaching out to talk to the National Science Foundation or to these corporate sponsors, articulating the schools that you can't get to because they can't afford it, which is what you were speaking to earlier. So you're saying, look, we're already going to be in this area, we're already going to do these shows. This is what the corporate sponsorships are going to do into those schools that can't afford us. And that would be a great way to expand. So now you're still minimizing logistics costs because you're going to be in the same place longer. But you're being able to articulate a need that wouldn't be fulfilled otherwise, because these other schools can afford you, and you're going to be on the road, and you're going to be there anyway. Here's a way of reaching out to an untapped market. Just a thought.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we have one final question. Donnell?
So the last question, first of all, your singing was absolutely amazing. I agree. We could have took 8 minutes of that, plus some extra time. But the last question is what can our 1 Million Cups community do for you?
This conversation has been one of the best ones we've had. This is one of the best rooms we've been in terms of great ideas and people who know how to do things that we don't know how to do for ourselves.
So I would say and this is, we both come from artistic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, research backgrounds, and lately business backgrounds. We have found that we make these just wonderful connections with folks, and we would love nothing more than to continue those connections to its fruition. So I would say what this room could do for us more than anything else is to have the next conversation, because we've had a lot of wonderful ideas come out in different rooms and never been able to have the next conversation. So I really look forward to getting a chance, and we look forward to getting a chance to actually see how to make, because you said it, there's a dot here and a dot here, and we just can't get from one to the other. Anything you can do with LabCorp and any of these other great ideas, we want to hear more.
So I'm going to challenge you, if I may. So follow-up is everything.
Yes.
Okay. So if you want Tony, as great a person as he is, I'm using him generically for a moment, although there is no generic Tony. Okay, right?
Thank you, John.
Absolutely. You have to follow up.
Yes.
You got to dog him, because he's going, even though he's diligent.
Anybody have an address?
No problem. I'll give you our cards.
So Kevin, Amy, I want to thank you and offer you the 1 Million Cups.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been unbelievable.
And you guys can talk to them right after the presentation. We're going to invite Gresham up from IMCEO, Blue Media's 16. Blue 16.
Thank you very much.
And he's going to discuss about the last time he was here. He presented at the 1 Million Cups, and
Thank you. Well, yeah, I presented, I want to say almost a year ago, in June. I wish that I can sing or would have sang it, but it sounded nothing like that. So, but basically I have a podcast, so I interview entrepreneurs and business owners on a blog that I had, and I have a digital marketing company. But I started a podcast, a laser-focused, daily podcast called the IMCEO Podcast. So it's about 10 or 15 minutes, but the goal was really to ask 6 questions to learn about a person's background, their business, what they do to kind of be effective and efficient, and so that you can kind of get that information in a short period of time. Basically, during my presentation, my challenge questions were What are your thoughts on the process and business model around the podcast? And are there ways that I can continue to be efficient, and ideas on future things that I can implement to become even more effective and efficient? So the goal was really to have it be efficient so that it wouldn't necessarily wreck my entire life, like doing a daily podcast potentially. So some of the things that were presented to me that I implemented, initially I had the idea that I wanted to focus on what I call healthy CEOs, which are people in the health, sports, fitness, and wellness industry. But during the presentation, somebody mentioned that especially to start a podcast, you want to be a lot more broadly focused because it's going to get you more, downloads, more traffic, more people listening because it's more general information. So that's something that I kind of adjusted where I focused it on kind of 3 different buckets. I call them pod CEOs, so people that have podcasts, that have businesses. Also people that are the healthy CEOs, so I continue with that, but also people that were on the blog. So I've been having the blog for a long period of time, and I wanted to tap into and build those relationships as well. So the other thing was I looked into other ways to kind of monetize, including adding affiliate links to my podcast. So my main driver for the podcast was really to build relationships and network with people because I have a digital marketing company. So that was kind of like the primary driver to replace a lot of the boards and everything that I was on. I was in way too much, and still sometimes I am in way too much. So I decided to kind of use that and play to my strengths to develop content, which I'm really good at and comes kind of naturally in order to do that. So that was one of the things that I implemented, and that was one of the things that came, from people thinking about different ways. One thing, actually, Reggie was at the presentation too. He mentioned doing like actual events. So that was something I wanted to add on. One of the things that I'm doing is like a live podcast recording in June, just to kind of build kind of like a groundswell of people that know about the podcast, that can subscribe to the podcast, things like that. But I also was a podcast sponsor at 2 different events where I did live podcast tapings there. So just a lot of different ways to kind of get the company name out there, get the brand out there, and also be as efficient as possible. So that's basically it.
All right.
Any questions of Gresham?
Do you have more events coming up besides June 16th?
So I cover a lot of events too. So I was at Facebook was here. Facebook is here actually. So if anybody wants to know about Facebook, go to that event. So I cover events. I was there yesterday there in DC. I also did a DC hackathon because it's Small Business Week this week. So happy Small Business Week. So I'm always going to events, but I'm looking to kind of partner with people that are already having events rather than putting on events myself necessarily. So that I can just kind of do the recordings, because the podcast itself takes about 10 or 15 minutes, so I can get a lot done in a short period of time. So I usually do them at the events, and it's a way for them to promote, get their name out, and also for me to not have to plan events, because that is not my strength.
Where can we go to find out information about all the stuff you're doing?
So you can go, my personal website is you can go to GreshamHarkless.com. It'll forward you to like links of all the different stuff, but I have a lot of websites up because I do web design. So blue16media.com. CEO Blog Nation, and IamCEO.cf is where you can find me.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yes. All right, so if you haven't gotten the idea already, this is a weekly event every Wednesday morning. Who is it?
Achievable Strategies.
Okay. Achievable Strategies is next week?
He's giving an update.
It's giving you an update next week, but who is our presenter next week?
Our presenter next week is Deb Cohen.
Deb Cohen, okay, and her company is?
Deb Cohen.
Deb Cohen, okay. And what?
HR
Consulting.
HR Consulting. So yeah, so it'll be a good, another unique one we haven't had yet. We've had a good string of unique presenters today.